are about to experience, Jackson Snyder presents. Direct from the Vero Essin Yahad, a Hebrew Nation radio original program. JSP is a variety show seeking out Jewish and Christian origins, religion, theology and history, and doing so in a fashion that is both educational and entertaining. Welcome to Jackson Snyder Presents.
Who the devil is Beelzebul? Three passages in the Synoptic Gospels identify this enigmatic figure known as Beelzebul as the ruler of demons. Matthew 12:24, Mark 3:22, Luke 11:15. In each of these passages, Yeshua's enemies attribute his ability to heal to the powers of Beelzebul, the prince of the demons. And no more information is given. Other verses where Beelzebul appears, Matthew 10:25 and 27, Luke 11:18 and 19, are even less helpful, mentioning only his name, and that's it. And there are no references to Beelzebul in early Jewish literature, or in any other early literature for that matter. Popular consensus, of course, equates Beelzebul with Satan, a connection that dates back at least to the time of Athanasius, the bishop of Alexandria in the 4th century, the main mover and shaker to get the concept of the Trinity into the Orthodox Catholic Church. Yet nowhere does the New Testament explicitly correlate these two figures. The identification of Beelzebul with Satan is but a possible contextual reading of Matthew 12:26 and 7, in which Yeshua answers his critics, "Every kingdom divided against itself is an evil waste. If Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself, and then will his kingdom stand?" And the Hebrew Bible and other Jewish writings list several names for Satan, or at least names that are correlated with the entity Satan: Mastema, Samael, Asmodeus, Belial, Beliar, and Old Slewfoot. But Beelzebul isn't among them. So where does this figure come from? One explanation that's often offered by scholars is that Beelzebul is a derisive corruption of Baal-zebub, which means Baal or Lord of a Fly. And in rabbinical literature, Zibuel means dung or filth or manure or excrement or other places that they once believed that such vermin spontaneously generated. The only problem with that is that if dung were intended, the Greek transliteration would read Beelzebul rather than Beelzebul. Instead, the Greek reflects the Semitic noun Zebul, meaning a lofty abode or a prince on high. A further problem with the Lord of Dung theory is that the underlying assumption, and probably false, so say some, that Beelzebub was an authentic commonplace epithet upon which the New Testament writers drew. The name just got popular. One piece of the puzzle comes not from 1st century Palestine, but from ancient Ugarit, the modern Ras Shamra, on Syria's Mediterranean coast, that flourished from about 1400 to 1300 BC. That's a long time ago. In 1929, of course you know, a vast archive of cuneiform tablets was discovered at that site, with the decipherment of Ugaritic, a Canaanite dialect akin to Hebrew that uses an alphabet system and cuneiform script. A new literature became available that provided a detailed and intriguing picture of Canaanite religion in the 2nd millennium BC. In these ancient literary texts, divine epithets play an important literary and theological role. They are, for the most part, formulaic and frequently recur in the general corpus of the material. There's a lot of appellations for the Canaanite fertility god Baal, probably to be equated with the Amorite weather god Hadad that appear in the Ugaritic texts. Prominent among Baal's epithets is Prince Adon of the Earth.
vocalized Zabulu, Balu, Ars. This epithet appears 14 times in 8 separate texts. For example,
Almighty Baal is dead. Prince Adon of the earth has perished.
I just love doing this. And
alive is Almighty Baal, Prince Lord of the earth lives.
Although this epithet doesn't occur in the Hebrew Bible, its vocalization in Hebrew would be Zebul Baal. The variance in pronunciation between the Ugaritic and Hebrew can be attributed to the loss of case endings in biblical Hebrew. The similarity between the divine epithet Zebul Baal and the New Testament Beelzebul is obvious. The only difference lying in the word order. They're both the same otherwise. In the Ugaritic corpus, the reverse, Baal-Zebul, never appears. So we've got to look elsewhere to establish an irrefutable link between Baal's divine name and the Synoptic Gospel's ruler of demons. Who else would be the ruler of demons but Satan? Well, if it's the ruler of demons and it is Baal-Zebub, the Adon of the fly, then it becomes obvious that all the demons spontaneously arose from a manure pile. By the way, I wrote a piece about this and orchestrated it for violin and piano. It's on my YouTube. It's called Ride the Green Fly. It's a character sketch of Beelzebub, best I could do with music and a violin. Check it out. Now, back to the subject, there's a vital piece of evidence. It comes from Punic funerary inscription of the 8th century BC, containing the feminine personal name Baal-Azbul. Ancient Near Eastern personal names commonly consist of or are incorporated divine epithets, so it's reasonable to identify this Phoenician name with its Ugaritic counterpart. A variant of the Baal name found its way into the New Testament as Beelzebul, and what is Harry Truman's middle name. Thus we should recognize Beelzebul as the Canaanite god Baal, reduced from deific grandeur to a malevolent spirit. Such a pattern of deliberate debasement of foreign deities into demons was common in the ancient world. We do the same thing. Old Slewfoot, for instance.
Old Scratch.
Revelation, for instance, urges us to give up worshipping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood that can't see or hear or walk. Revelation 9:20. The apostate Paul, too, makes the connection between pagan deities or idols and demons. He says, "What do I imply then? That food sacrificed to idols is anything? Or that an idol is anything? No! I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to Elohim." 1 Corinthians 10:19. In the ancient Near East, in other words, you dealt with foreign gods by subjecting them to ridicule.
In the deliverance ministry, probably one of the most effective things you can do when a demon pops out of somebody and accuses you of something is just laugh them to scorn.
In numerous instances in the Hebrew Bible, people are castigated for respecting dumb or mute gods, gods that don't even have a voice. For example, Jeremiah 10:8. The principal deity of the Sumerian pantheon appears in mid-3rd millennium BC tablets from Ebla as Enlil. But in the Hebrew Bible, the name appears as Eliel, meaning an idol or a non-deity, such as found in Leviticus 19:4. In Eblaite, Enlil was pronounced Elilu, a cognate of the Hebrew Eliel. Cyrus Gordon has opined that in the 14th century BC, Ugarit, ILL, was a minor deity. Thus, there's a clear pattern of debasement from the 3rd millennium Eblaite Ilelu, the great god, to the 14th century BC Ugarit Il,
a minor deity, to the Hebrew Eliel, an idol or non-deity. That was clear as mud. In reference to Beelzebub in 2 Kings 1, it also fits this pattern of debasement. Apart from the reference in this chapter of Kings, Beelzebub appears nowhere else in ancient Near Eastern literature. It's likely, then, that the epithet was newly coined by the author of the King's passage rather than being a common epithet that the author merely borrowed, which suggests, in turn, that the New Testament references do not derive from a common contemporaneous epithet either. By altering a single letter, L to B, the Israelites reduced the Adon prince, Beelzebul, Yahweh's chief rival, to the lord of a fly. An insignificant being. Beelzebul, the high god, became, in the flick of a stylus, Beelzebub, a powerless idol. Similarly, in the New Testament, the kingly Beelzebul is reduced to the demon Beelzebub. The princely Beelzebul is reduced to the demon Beelzebul, a powerless minor deity associated with mute idols. The New Testament writer followed the same Near Eastern practice of debasing foreign gods. Old scratch. Still many questions remain. Why does the name Beelzebul not appear in any writings contemporaneous with the New Testament? Does the fact that Yeshua is accused of healing with the help of Beelzebul suggest that Beelzebul was central to the magical practices of first century Palestine? Unfortunately for these questions, we have as yet no answers.
You're the devil in disguise, or is you...
How should we picture the wily serpent of the Garden of Eden? He's often regarded as the devil in snake's clothes. Yet, much to many people's surprise, there is no devil in Eden, or, for that matter, anywhere in the Old Testament Hebrew Bible. In the Hebrew Bible, the serpent of Eden is just called Nahash, or serpent. He's never referred to as the devil or Satan. The figure called Satan in the book of Job is not a character bearing this name, but a heavenly official with the title Satan, meaning prosecutor. The Hebrew term derives from the verb to accuse. According to the book of Job, prosecutor roams to and fro on the earth and takes his place among the other sons of Elohim. His job is to report on earthly doings in the heavenly court. In fact, the first biblical figure to bear the title Satan is none other than King David in 1 Samuel 29:4, which I quote, "He may become a Satan to us in battle." Often translated there, adversary. A fully realized dualist concept of Satan, as we know him, a prince of darkness, the embodiment of cosmic evil perpetually at war with the good of God, first appears in the 2nd or 1st century BC writings of the Dead Sea Scroll community, which generally refers to him as Belial, the Swallower. It's not until the 1st century A.D., in the Jewish Apocalypse of Moses and the Jewish Christian New Testament book of Revelation, that the serpent of Genesis is identified explicitly with the devil. Some extra-biblical traditions even suggest that Eve bore Cain after a serpentine sexual seduction. Now, what was somebody's intention on creating that? Another peculiar consequence of this connection between the devil and the serpent features regularly in medieval and Renaissance depictions of the Genesis story where, as you can see from many paintings, or from the video version of this speech, the serpent devil is a woman. This is no lesbian serpent girl on the make for Eve. Rather, she derives from the medieval Jewish Christian Lilith tradition, which tried to reconcile the two accounts of the creation of women in Genesis 1 and 2. According to this legend, the woman created in Genesis 1:27 was Lilith, Adam's first rebellious wife. After Lilith left Adam, Eve was produced from his rib, as recounted in Genesis 2:21, Or if you go back and check one of my teachings from his baculum, which is not a rib, jealous Lilith, with the help of the devil, shape-shifted into a serpent, albeit with her seductive face and hair intact, and indistinguishable from Eve's. She then returned to Eden to wreak her vengeance upon the new couple. While the Lilith of art might seem a far cry from what the biblical writers had in mind when they cast the snake as the snare in the Garden of Eden, Lilith's combination of human and animal form constitutes a remarkable echo of what the original writers probably did visualize.
So say scholars, and many of them.
For an idea of what that original snake looked like, we can turn to the work of Othmar Kiel and his colleagues at the University of Freiburg in Germany, who have been analyzing the remarkable array of images with which biblical Israelites chose to decorate their seals. Among the motifs was an Egyptian-style 2- or 4-winged Urius, that is a rearing cobra, that appears on seals bearing the names of a royal prince, a Yahwist priest, and other prominent Judeans and Israelites. Kuhl identifies these images with the winged singing seraphim of Isaiah 6, 2-7. He notes that the poisonous snakes with which Elohim attacked the rebellious Israelites in the wilderness in Numbers 21 are described as seraphim. The root means burning, and that the divinely mandated anti-venom was a snake or seraph that Moses cast and set on a pole for the stricken Israelites to gaze at and be healed. According to 2 Kings 18:4, the Israelites worshipped Moses' bronze seraph, which they called Nehushtan, a play on the words for snake and for bronze, until King Hezekiah's reform did away with it. The seal images provide a visual record of this link in Israelite religious tradition between Yahweh and supernatural snakes, that is, seraphim. Still, why would the snake in Eden have wings? Like Lilith, the serpent girl, the seraphim were hybrids, a combination of a snake and a bird. In the Bible, Yahweh is regularly associated with another more familiar hybrid, the winged cherub, or an easier word is sphinx. Across the ancient Near East, hybrid animals function as divine guardians. Images of such hybrids were regularly situated at thresholds, especially at temple thresholds, where earth and sky were believed to intersect. Such places where it was impossible to tell where earth ended and heaven began were believed to be highly charged and dangerous. Hybrids, whose individual component parts belonged to the real world but in combination became supernatural, expressed this same ambiguity. Hence the cherubim motif was repeated on Jerusalem's temple doors, walls, and curtains, for example, in 1 Kings 6:29. And 2 giant gold-covered cherubim stood over and protected the Ark of the Covenant, as in 1 Kings 6:23. If we turn to the Garden of Eden, another space where earth is sky and sky is earth, we find cherubim right where we might expect them, guarding the way to the tree of life. At the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim, and a sword flaming and turning to guard the way to the tree of life. Genesis 3:24. The snake may have been posted at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, whose fruit, according to the snake, would take Adam and Eve across the threshold that separated living beings from gods. Yahweh's curse is most appropriate. The snake must slither upon his belly. Apparently he has lost his wings. No longer winged or celestial, the snake is lower than all the other mere creatures of the earth and is condemned to a diet of dust. These hybrids, these mixes, are traditionally called Chimera, that is Chimera, an idea that originated in Greek mythology as far back as Homer and the Iliad. Do you ask me if Chimera actually existed? Well, let me mention to you just a few of the gods of that time that were chimerae. The centaur, half man, half horse creatures. They ran wild and were unruly. Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards the entrance to Hades, or the specific chimera, part lion, part goat, part snake, all monster. Or the Gorgon, the snake-haired and snake-bodied humanoid that was created in its mother's image. Its stare could turn a person to stone. Medusa became one of these creatures in a later myth. Medusa with the snakes for hair, a disciple of Athena, who was turned into a Gorgon. The griffin, a creature with the body of a lion, the tail of a snake, and the head and wings of an eagle. Mermaids, sea creatures with the head and torso of a woman and the tail of a fish. And the Minotaur, the creature with the head and legs of a bull and the torso of a man who guarded the exit to the labyrinth. Pegasus, technically the proper name of Bellerophon's winged horse, which became the general name for winged horses. And the satyrs, Satyr, half men, half goats, who were wild and lustful. The god, worshipped at the mouth of Baal, that we spoke of before, was primarily the god Pan, who was a satyr. And the Sphinx, the half-human, half-lion, that forces those it meets to answer its riddles, or die. Unicorn, a magical horse with a single horn on its forehead. These are the more well-known of the human-animal hybrids that populated Greek mythology, and the biblical mythology that I just mentioned earlier. I never considered them that they might have been real because we all know, well, you can't mix different species together. Well, maybe you couldn't then, but you can now. Human beings have learned how to mix DNA from different and create modern-day chimeras. It's progressed far enough that the laws regulating it have already been enacted in the U.S. and Europe. This from Animal-Human Crossbreeding, 2016. Several states have already made it a felony to produce mixed-species hybrids. It's only a misdemeanor to simply have one you bought from somewhere, probably England. This sort of thing is perfectly legal across the pond. And maybe about the same time, 2, 3, 4 years ago, there was a real eye-opener floating around in the news. The human-pig hybrid. They just continue to move along in animal-human hybrid research. The goal is to grow a replacement human pancreas in a pig using stem cells. Us kind of people would probably have to reject such a pancreas unless our lives were in jeopardy. But regarding the human-pig hybrid, they have dropped the bomb on us. Listen to this. They let the human-pig embryo grow for a month, then remove and dissect it to see how things appear to be developing compared to plan. And this month is long enough for us to try to understand how the human and pig cells mix together early on without raising ethical concerns about mature, chimeric animals. Is this a good thing, or is this a bad thing? I can certainly think of the good of it, like the example I just pointed out. Make some organs people could use to keep them alive a little longer, even if that's ethical. But then we have this information from the pseudepigrapha that tells us that these things are evil, that they're the offspring of devils, and that they rampaged on earth as giants, seeking to eat human flesh and drink human blood, and mated with all kinds of creatures. Such ethics as are displayed about the human pig fit right in with the abortion mentality. It's in the womb. We can't see it. It's an embryo, a zygote, a fetus, an egg, not a human being. Connecting the dots, we are, as a generation, playing around with something that's infinitely beyond our pay grade. Maybe you and I aren't doing it, but it's definitely being done, and it's probably much farther along than you can even realize. And it's no different from what the fallen watchers are doing with humans and about anything else they could get their hands on. Did they use modern technology? Probably not, but they did it. They had the technology to do it because chimeric entities are found in every culture. Maybe there was a true root to all that. They didn't have test tubes or gene sequencers, I don't suspect, but they had the secret of the universe to draw on and the ability as spirits to take different physical forms. Of course, I'm going to read a couple verses from Enoch, in this case 17 and 19.
And they took and brought me to a place in which those who were there were like flaming fire. And when they wished,
they appeared as men. And Uriel said to me, Here stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here they shall stand, till the great day of judgment, in which they shall be judged till they are made an end of. And of the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. I, Hanok, alone saw the vision, the end of all things, and no man shall see as I have seen. The fallen watchers mated with women, producing the Nephilim, or the Gibberim. They also mated with other animals to produce, in all likelihood, several, if not most, of the mythological hybrids, before they begin to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish. Enoch 7. Do we see subtle hybrids today? Certainly people's minds are set for the reintroduction of such monstrosities, who are, if any of this information is actually true, the progeny of the devil, 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 the devil. You have been listening to Jackson Snyder Presents on Hebrew Nation Radio.